Hello everyone, Thijs here again with another video of the cards of the new expansion, Main Streets of Gadgetzan. I'm gonna do a second card review about my thoughts about the new cards that are released this week. A lot of cards are revealed again, around 25 cards. So let's just go straight over all the new cards. And here you already see the first new card. It is the Blowgill Sniper. 2 mana Murloc, 2/1, deal 1 damage. I think this is a Murloc that will not see many play. Murloc deck's not really, still not really strong in the expansion. There are ways that I can see Murlocs doing better. There are more and more Murlocs being released. But this Murloc with dealing 1 damage, it feels kind of like an Elven Archer. For 1 more mana where it has 1 more attack. A 2 mana card that has 2/1 stats is just really weak in general with the 1 life. I know Murlocs are always low life and they can work together. But I see it as quite a weak Murloc in general. Don't think it's gonna see much play. You really have to make this card work in an aggressive Murloc deck, and I don't think that this is the Murloc you want to do it with. There are still the better Murlocs around. This one not really appealing to me, so hopefully we'll see some play, but I'm a little scared for this card. Dirty Red, really exciting card. 2 mana neutral card, 2 mana 2/6 with taunt, so really strong effect. Has taunt. Battle Cry, your opponent summons a random minion from their hand. So it's gonna be interesting how this card is gonna work out. It really reminds me on Deathlord, that was a really popular card 1 year ago, especially in defensive decks. And having the ability for 2 mana to make a 6 health taunt with still 2 attack is really strong. There is a Battle Cry that can hurt you because it puts a random minion from their opponent's hand on the board. I will say that Battle Cry often really hurts you. There are some ways that for combo decks, for example, that it can actually be really bad to have a Malga or a Malygos early on the board, or having a lot of the Battle Cry minions. If they get put on the board, they are most of the time quite weaker. But in general, I would say you don't really want to get the random minion from their opponent's hand, but it's a way to also get rid of their hand faster. A really good card against aggro. You will see this card being this is a card you can make your deck a little around, so quite exciting about it, about this one. And I think there are some really dirty combos also possible with this one, where you just have a strategy of putting your opponent, just let them play everything into a big removal or something. Really exciting card, really strong for the stats. A really interesting Battle Cry, so I'm for sure this card is already solid. In general, I would say against aggro. And now let's see if there are also dirty combos possible. Really cool card. Here we have another neutral card, 4 mana 4/4, a Backroom Bouncer. Whenever a friendly minion dies, gain +1 attack. We have seen more of these neutral cards. There's always when there are new neutral cards coming out, so just some normal standard cards coming out. This is another one of them. For Constructed, this is not gonna be a card that will be too relevant. When a friendly minion dies, claims +1 attack, even if it will be still not doing much. It's already an effect that is not easy to do, and if it only gains an attack, if it will gain a defense, it could be considering. I could consider it being okay, but with the offense, like, we have already 4 mana cards that are 5/4, 6/4, and that don't see anything play. So really scared for this card. Don't think we will see it much in Constructed. It's also not a beast or something, so there's not really extra synergy possible. I don't really see much what will make this card better than the average 4-drop, so not too exciting for me. Dispatch Kodo, another 4 mana card, this time a 4 mana beast card for the hunter, 2/4, so Stats wise, maybe not that much, but then the battle cry, deal damage equal to the minion's attack. What we have seen, and what we probably gonna see a little bit more even, is that there will be cards with that are from the hand are gonna buff minions. And let's say if this minion has 3 attack or 4 attack because it gets buffed during the game, it becomes quite a strong deal damage effect. It really reminds me on the old Keeper of the Grove. Keeper of the Grove being a druid card, 4 mana, 2/4, deal 2 damage or silence a minion. But if this card is already 4 mana, 2/4 with a battle cry of deal 2 damage, it's already a really strong card for mid-range hunter, I would say. And once it comes to the point of when it gets 3 attack, it becomes really strong. So then we can also consider this card in Constructed. I think it's a really cool card. It makes, but now the weakness is still of the hunter is when it is behind, it really struggles to come back on board. There are not many ways. The way hunter has to come back from board nowadays is they just play their minions into your opponent's minions and you just hope your opponent is not gonna remove it. I think this card is gonna be really strong for the mid-range hunter, a little bit slower version. Not sure if it will find any space in the standard secret hunter, but Keeper of the Grove has always been quite a good card. Of course, there was always the choose one effect between the silence, but with a little bit stronger of this battle cry effect, I think, and also it being a beast, I think this card is quite strong and gonna be a card that you will consider to put in your mid-range hunter deck. Smuggler's a Run, 1 mana paladin card, give all minions in your hand +1/+1. Really interesting card. Here we go again into the spells, minions that are buffing everything that is in our hand. I will say this is a card that has to be better in some kind of aggressive paladin. So it is gonna be, a lot of the cards that are being revealed are for paladin are a little bit more related to an aggressive playstyle. We have seen already 1 and 2 drops before, so I can see it working in that way. Paladin gets a lot of these buff cards of all minions, so really interesting if that archetype will find any play. It's really hard to evaluate how strong these cards will be. Just having this spell for just 1 mana has to be strong, because it's quite a strong effect for just 1 mana. I would say really strong effect for 1 mana. If you can buff everything you have at turn 1, let's say you have 5 cards in your hand and you just bomb, you buff everything. It has to be stronger for like an aggressive playstyle. But I think this effect is quite strong. I think this is going to be a really good card. I'm not sure how good the archetype will be, but this card really strong for 1 mana. Really good card. And here we have another really interesting card. 5 mana, Dopplegangster. 5 mana 2/2. That doesn't maybe sound that appealing, but Battle Cry, summon 2 copies of this minion. And this is a really interesting battle cry. Where we know already the card Force of Nature. Force of Nature now being a card 5 mana, summon 3 2/2s. That is kind of how the Dopplegangster is also, but only in the worst way. There are a lot of upswings, a lot of ways you can make your deck around this card. This is a card you can make your deck around. The battle cry of summon 2 copies of this minion gives the ability, if you buff this card, if you can make it somehow, and we have seen a lot of cards that you can use to buff cards in your hand. If this card, if the Dopplegangster finds any buff, if you make it a 3/3 out of your hand or a 4/4, you meanwhile have a battle cry that copies the buffed minion. So then you have for 5 mana 3 3/3s or 3 4/4s, and then the effect starts to become really strong. There's also a really strong effect with Bran I already see, where you get 4 already. You in total get 5 Dopplegangsters. There's a lot of things you can do with this card. You can make your deck around it. This is a card that we kind of want to buff from our hand. So we'll see how this card is gonna do. It also has great synergy with Evolve, where you have like 3 Dopplegangsters being evolved to, I'm not sure what drops, but I guess 6 drops, and that's gonna be quite insane. Lot of synergy. Exciting card. Makes the cards that are buffing minions in your hand more viable, I would say. Because this is really a card that can snowball the deck a lot. So we'll see how this will be. But it's a card you can make your decks around. I'm not sure what deck can be the best with it. But I would say the decks that are gaining the much. Like we also already saw the Paladin class that gains a lot of cards to buff minions from your hand. Well, Dopplegangster being the perfect neutral card for that. So we'll see some play for sure. Grimstreet Protector, 7 mana 6/6. Paladin card. Taunt, Battlecry, give eject the minions Divine Shield. So Paladin already has some really great late game cards. We have the 8 slot that is totally filled, 7 slot being a little bit weaker. Interesting card here with the Battlecry of gifting a Justice Minion Divine Shield. The only problem that I have a little bit in this card is where does it fit? It doesn't really fit in any current available Paladin. It's also an effect, kind of like a win more effect, because once Paladin is on board, they are normally really strong already. It's an effect that is a little bit hard to pull off. If it works, it might be great, but I don't even know if you want to play this card if it will give 1 Divine Shield. So with this kind of a battle cry, yes, it has taunt, so it kind of is a little bit annoying. With it having taunt itself, if it gets a little buffs, might become a little bit better. You get some trade options, but I think this card is not fitting into current the Paladin decks. Well, Paladin just wants to get on board. Like, once the Paladin is on board, it's already so strong. The current problem for Paladin is getting on board. So not too excited. I think for Arena, for example, it can become a great card. For the constructed Paladin that is really based on the aggro or the really heavy control, I don't think it can take a spot away because it's too expensive. And Paladin has just really great cards like Tyrion, like Ragnaros. Really liking the horse also now in Paladin. I don't think it will take a spot away. It's a cool one, but I cannot see it taking a spot in the current Paladin version. Grimy Gadgeteer, 4 mana 4/3 warrior card. At the end of your turn, give a random minion in your hand +2/+2. So another card that gives a random minion +2/+2. We already saw now some synergy cards with, for example, the Dopplegangster. I have to just say, like, this effect is quite strong. A 4 mana 4/3. It's not insane, it's not too great, but it's not bad either. I don't think Warrior is the class that is gonna be strong with buffing minions from your hand. I think other classes are wanting this effect a little bit more. That it gives a random minion the buff, I don't think it's that big of an issue, because you will probably make your deck a little around this. This is not a card you want to include in your deck just because the card is too strong. So the card is solid. The card is solid. If the warrior gains a little bit more access to buff effects and can really make a strong game plan from it, not just by making a little bit better minions, I think this card might become viable. The card itself is strong. I think it's a pretty good card for especially Arena Warrior that has a little bit of struggles. I just don't think this is what the constructed warrior game plan has. I cannot see it making too strong. The card itself is just good, I would say. Just don't think this is the concept warrior can go towards. Maybe if it gains a little bit more supportive cards, we will see. I mean, if you can buff... Maybe I'm underestimating it for the warrior class. I just think there are other classes that can do it better. Card itself is strong. I can see if, for example, you buff your Acolyte 2 and 3, 5 and it can work. But I'm not sure if this will be an inclusion in the warrior decks. In the more control warrior decks. So we have here another weapon for the warrior. 4 mana weapon. Brass Knuckles. After your hero attacks, give a random minion in your hand +1. Another card to buff minions with for the warrior. Yeah, this weapon you won't see play. You have to overpay too much after, I would say. I can see that you can buff quite well now. But this weapon you really overpay. We already have the... This weapon I would say should be 2 mana with the effect maybe 3 mana. But it's not a weapon the warrior wants to play. Like if you just combine it to Warx, you can argue that they are kind of the same for what they do. And you don't want to play, you don't want to pay 2 mana for getting 3 times a random minion +1/+1. Plus you also at some moment get too many weapons in your deck. And yeah, this weapon just gonna be a little too weak for warrior. Red Pack. 3 mana 2/2. Another hunter card. Death Rattle. Summon a number of 1/1 reds equal to the minion's attack. So another hunter card that will benefit if you can buff these cards during the game from your hand. And there we go again. I just have to honestly say it's a really hard effect to evaluate. But card itself quite slow. But with a Death Rattle effects of a number of 1/1s. It's gonna be a card that you want to make your deck a little around. I can see that. And 1/1s are a little bit tricky because there are quite some spells that are just dealing with 1/1 super efficiently. So in that way the card can be a little bit weak itself. But once you are having a buff or you Houndmaster it, even with an animal companion, it has some synergy, or just from your hand already, using a card that buffs it from your hand can become strong. I mean, if we just look at in 3 mana 2/2, how much reds you want to get, I would say you at least want 3 reds, and that shouldn't be too difficult. It's just really hard to say like what cards are you gonna include in these buff minion expansion and which not. I think this card is really strong. It's just gonna be maybe a little bit rough card for the hunter. Like opponents will trade this card immediately away if they can. You don't want to get this card being Houndmasters. And then 3 mana 2/2 is just getting traded really well. In that way you can combine it a little bit with the Grandmother that is a 1/1 and gets in 3/2, where even the card itself, as the card normally look, it's not too scary, but because it comes early, it's really weak itself. It gets traded away quite nice. So it's a card that really needs to get direct support, I think, from your hand, and cannot just be played at turn 3 and hope for the best. It just gets traded away. So you need to play buff cards that are buffing cards from your hand, and then the card might become strong. Knuckles! So here we have the Hunter Legendary, and finally not a 9 or 8 mana Hunter Legendary, no. Knuckle is a 5 mana 3/7. After this attacks a minion, it also hits the enemy hero. So a Hunter card that goes face and trades at the same time. Huh. Me like that, me like. No, but serious, a 5 mana Hunter card with 7 health is quite strong. It is a minion that once it attacks, and also it attacks the enemy hero, like it fits the strategy of the Hunter in general really well. Because Hunter still wants to trade, but also wants to hit face, and once you are hitting face with the Hunter, it always becomes way better than any other class because of their hero power. So if you attack a minion with taunt also, you still hit the face. It's quite a strong card. 7 health, really key here. Still also some really nice synergy with the buff minions that are coming from your hand. Great synergy with Houndmaster. I think Knuckles is quite strong. I think Knuckles is a card you want to play in your mid-range Hunter. 5 slot also being the one of the weaker slots. It has always been one of the weaker slots from the start of Hunter, because the turn 4 you always had some Hunter cards with the Houndmaster. Turn 6 was the high main turn. We always had to include a Kodo or a Tiger, and they are just not optimal. And I can see Knuckles being the 1/5 drop card you want to play in the Hunter deck. Just the effect is quite solid, and the 7 health is really key in this one. 3 attack also seems to just be enough to be already decent itself. If it will have 2 attack, I will not like it. But for 3 attack, I think the card is gonna be quite popular. It reminds me a little bit on the Cobra shot that did 3 damage. But now you just have the effect into a minion, and that is just so much better. So really good Hunter legendary, I would say. Normally Hunter doesn't get great legendaries because of the high main already being so strong. But this one has good potential. I really like Knuckles. And here we have him, Don Hancho. Was a card that we already knew that would come out, but we didn't know how the card would look like. A card you could vote for. It's a legendary, neutral legend. Well, not a neutral legendary, but the legendary for the Paladin, Warrior, and Hunter. 7 mana, 5/6. So if I just look only at the stats, we overpay this card by... Well, we will not play a 5 mana, 5/6. We will probably consider playing a minion for 5/6 for 4 mana. I think that's just fine to say that for 4 mana this card will be quite good. So we overpay this card for 3 mana. For the overpay of 3 mana, we are giving a random minion in your hand +5/+5. Of course, effect being quite strong, but having this effect on a 7 mana card, you have to consider that at 7 mana the game is getting close. We are playing a trade battle a little bit, and then you out of nowhere playing 7 mana 5/6 card. It's gonna be quite. It's really slow. It's a really slow effect. Because, well, a Battle Cry is normally not a slow effect, but it's not a Battle Cry that does any direct effect on board. Of course, with Battle Cries there is some synergy. I mean, I can see the fancy combo with Brand, for example. But I think these, like that, are just a little bit fancy. You cannot really relay on that too much. I don't think this legendary is gonna be too much. It's not a card you want to play in Hunter. I cannot see this card wanting to be played in any Hunter deck. I can see it in some kind of Warrior, like together with the other Warrior cards, but I just don't think it's that great. I can see it some in Paladin. I just don't think the classes that are we are having here are great for this card. They are not classes that can because Hunter has a weak comeback mechanic. Paladin and Warrior are really slow, and they don't want to put in another slow card. The buff Paladin class will be more aggressive, and then I don't think you want to include in 7 mana 5/6. It's gonna be interesting. I think the card is a little bit too weak for the current constructed decks, but with the whole buff expansion coming up, it can get a spot there, and then maybe it can be good. I mean, of course, you have the turn 7 into turn 8 where, let's say, we played in Paladin and you buff Tyrion like insane. Maybe these mechanic I get a little bit, it really is also going to be a little bit depending on how aggressive the meta is. Because in the current meta, this card is not good. If the meta might become a little slower, yeah, this card can see some play. So I hope that will be the case, and that it finds the play. And here another legendary, Madame Goya, neutral legendary. And it's a 6 mana 4/3 battle cry. Choose a friendly minion, swap it with a minion in your deck. So here we are getting quite an insane really insane effect. It's a little bit comparable to Barnes, a little bit more relatable to Tuskar kind of with the effect. But the funny thing is that it also has with the swap mechanic, you can also, once you have played Reno, Jackson for example, you can swap it back in the deck. So it has some funny mechanic of where the swap might become that good already with the choose. But of course you want to also play it with like getting a really strong minion on board. I'm just really happy because I really don't like this effect. I think it's a really toxic effect. I don't think it's an effect people in Constructed like. You can make, the card is for sure cool, but it's a little bit the same with Barnes, I feel, where, yeah, the card can be cool, but Barnes is too good. Barnes is a toxic card that is too good for his stats. So I'm just really happy this card is 6 mana. I'm happy Blizzard learned of what they did with Tuskar, and that they saw that it's just not a fun mechanic for Constructed if it comes early in the game. So for 6 mana, I guess it can be fine. This is just not a card you want to see being in Constructed, because sometimes you get like a really bad thing on the board and sometimes it can just straight up win you the game. So it being 6 mana with really bad stats, I hope it makes sure that it's not gonna be, that it's gonna make fun decks viable, but not gonna be playable in Constructed. And I think we don't see this card gonna be played in Constructed. And another Paladin card, and 1 mana Paladin card, so another more aggressive Paladin card. 1 mana 2/1 Murloc also. Give a random Murloc in your hand +1/+1. So we have to play Murlocs with this card. There is already the 1 mana Murloc card that the Paladin has, the 1/3. You can put in more Murlocs. Servinley is one that's already decent, but Paladin is a class that can play Murlocs, and Paladin is often, like, together with Warlock, I would say the class that can make an aggressive Murloc deck playable. With more of these buff cards, maybe this card can become good. The card is quite solid itself, like a 1 mana 2/1 is not too bad. And with a direct effect of buffing, sure. But I don't think it's enough. 1 health is weak. It's kind of like it can become yeah, you play it in 1 mana 3/2 with buffing a Murloc. It's just that the Murloc needs so much to become viable, man. Like, we have so many strong decks. Murlocs are just not that strong, and I see what we can try now with Paladin. It can become an aggressive class, and we'll see some, like, we will see this. I'm gonna try it for sure. I just don't think this card is gonna bring it over the top. It's gonna be a card that is okay. We have more cards that are okay for this deck, but we need more than it being just okay. So gonna need more supportive cards to become viable. Tanaris Hogchopper. 4 mana 4/4, battle cry. If your opponent's hand is empty, gain charge. We will see more of these cards that are having a battle cry where it kind of like is a counter battle cry and then it gains charge. I think 4 mana 4/4 with a possible charge of on your opponent's hand being empty is too reactive. There is not much you cannot rely on this card. I don't even know what kind of deck you want to play this in, but you need to make sure that your opponent is playing a deck that wants to empty their or playing a deck that wants to empty their hand all the time. And there are not many decks that really have that strategy. This card, Warlock has it, some aggro decks have it, but it's not too often that you are totally empty. And yeah, and then you have a 4 mana 4/4 charge. It's still not too insane. We have one card that is insanely strong with charge. That's Alexstrasza's Champion. If I look after that, we have Horse Rider. That is quite, you see quite some play. Horse Rider you can see as a 3 mana 2/3 charge, I would say, because the Divine Shield you can combine with 2 health. So that's a 3 mana 2/3 charge, and I don't think this, and that's a card that always has charge. This card doesn't always have cards. It's too situational, and it's a weak battle cry. This is not gonna happen too often, so not a really good card. Here we have a little bit more interesting card, and I think this one is a little bit more viable. The Spiked Hogrider. The 5 mana 5/5 battle cry. If your enemy minion has taunt, gain charge. And once there is a taunt meta, if there are taunt decks a little bit more popular, yeah, then a 5 mana 5/5 charge is quite good. Yeah, if an enemy has a taunt, it has to trade into the taunt, but maybe there are other minions that can trade into the taunt a little bit better. Another card, these are more tech cards you want to put in if the meta is going into, for this card, into a taunt direction. And then this card can become quite solid. Still solid at best. So it's a card that you only want to tech in once their decks, once the meta get overwhelmed by the taunt mechanic. Then this card will see some play. Otherwise, yeah, it's not really a card you want to put in. And the last one of this mechanic, a 6 mana 6/6. It's the Hogleader, a battle cry. If your opponent has 6 or more cards in hand, gain charge. Another card, just repeating myself here a little bit, it's a tech card. It's a card that you want to put in once the meta is going into the direction for this card, going into a direction of your opponent having a lot of cards in your hand. So, Freeze Mage, Handlock, well, solid against Druid maybe. But your opponent will also, if they know you play this card, will try to empty your hand. I think this is one of the weaker one. There are not too many decks that really do this. And also in 6 mana 6/6, well, that's quite a solid charge. But not a really good card. It's just a tech card you will put in. It can be good for a tournament setup where you can pick decks into one of their opponent's deck, and then you can maybe consider these cards. I think the 5 mana one where you counter the taunt is viable, maybe can become viable. I think this one is not really strong. And now we are going to Mage. Mage getting some more strong cards. 3 mana, deal 2 damage to all minions. So, deal 2 damage to all minions. I would say this is making a control mage a little bit more playable. We will come to more mage cards soon, and then I will also come back to this card a little, where I think this card can be a good removal for a control mage that is gonna work in more a Reno direction. And then I think, because for Reno mage decks or for decks that want to play one-offs, no duplicates, removal cards are quite strong. These are the cards you want to play. I think this card is, I like it a lot. I really like that we are getting some AoE cards back. Blizzard has really gone into a direction where they really went more for the curve direction. So I'm really happy to see cards coming into the game that are not playable in tempo decks and are considerable in control decks. So that already makes me really happy. And I think this is just quite a solid one. Can combine it with Demon Rev, I would say, but that also deals 2 damage to everything except demons. So, and it also really benefits if you don't have minions on your board yourself, because then you don't damage them. So for a control mage, quite a great card. I like it. It's not too exciting itself. But it's a 6 out of 10. It's just a nice card, and if we can make a Reno mage work, this can be an inclusion. So, nice card. Kabal Chemist. 4 mana 3/3 battle cry. Add a random potion to your hand. Can somebody help me what a random potion is? What are the random potions? Because I just don't know. Oh, there are new potions coming. Okay, so this card really depending a little bit on the potions. It's a random one, so that makes it already a little bit harder. One of the potion is previous card, the rest are unrevealed yet. Okay, so this card is just gonna be a little bit hard to evaluate. Let's come back to this card in another review. But in 4 mana 3/3 stats wise, we are overpaying for 2 mana. Battle Cry of adding a random potion can become strong. I can see it being a card like for Mage being strong. I can see it for Warlock being okay. I don't think it's a card for Priest. I would say if the poisons are becoming good, and if they are worth more than like if they are like 1 mana and they are quite strong for their effect, they might be nice. Like 3 mana, deal 2 damage as a poison. Well, like these are quite solid. If all the poisons are strong, this card might become strong. So it's a card I will say more for Warlock and for Mage being quite nice. I don't see why Priest can do much with this. It's not really a stats Priest card. Also on the 4 slot. So yeah, I think especially Mage, it might become strong. But we will see of the next poisons coming out. It's for sure a cool card. It's gonna be making spell decks a little bit more. Again, for Reno Mage, maybe a viable card. So we'll see. Abyssal Enforcer, 7 mana, 6/6, a demon. Battlecry, deal 3 damage to all other targets. Guys, these are the cards I want to see. I'm so happy about this card. Not just because 7 mana, 6/6, Battlecry, deal 3 damage. I'm just happy that I see a Warlock card that is not a card for Zoo. I have been, like, you guys know what my favorite deck maybe all time is. Or one of my favorite decks, it's Handlock. It's Control Warlock. Control Warlock really not being any around anymore in the high competitive constructed scene, because it has no good way of heal. It has, besides Reno, it has hard time dealing with aggressive decks. I'm just happy to see a card that is not playable for the aggressive Warlock class, but is more for the Control Warlock class. 7 mana, and now let's go more towards the card. 7 mana, 6/6 is... We pay for this effect. We play at least 2 mana for the effect. But with the Battlecry of deal 3 damage to all other targets, it's an Hellfire that doesn't damage yourself. Hellfire is a good card. Hellfire is a 4 mana deal 3 AoE damage. And now, if we consider this card being... It's a little bit better than Hellfire, but let's say it's as good as Hellfire. That effect is worth 4 mana. And now we are having a 3 mana 6/6 left. So really, really strong card. It's also a card. It's not a legendary or something, so you can play 2 of. It being a demon, I don't know if it really matters too much. Yeah, it might be a little bit upside effect. But just the card in general, really strong. Reno Lock will really like this card. If Reno Lock can still be around there, Reno still be around will be around in competitive for 4 more months or something. So it will be in direct inclusion in my Reno. I just wonder if there's any more Warlock cards, and we don't know much about Warlock now. I hope there's more Warlock cards coming up that will not only rely on Reno Warlock, but can also go more towards a Dragon Warlock and Control Warlock, Handlock, whatever. Gonna be a cool card. Really happy about this card. I like this one a lot. It's these are the cards I want to see. I don't want to see tempo cards. I want to see cards that are good for the control classes again. The game is so tempo based. This is just a card that cannot be included in the discard zoo or in demon zoo or in the aggressive zoo decks. So cool card. Really cool card and really good card also. Kabal Lackey, 1 mana mage card. Battlecry, the next secret you play this turn costs a 0. Strong effect. Really strong effect. The only problem with mage is that you don't want to play secrets. The secrets for mage are really overpaid. All their secrets you don't really want to play. You don't want to pay 3 mana for. I don't even know if you would like to play 2 mana for. So you have to include secrets, and that's the thing that hurts you the most. The effect is really strong. The effect is really strong. There are also some really fancy combos where if you play the next secret, like for example for Freeze Mage, the problem sometimes if you want to Alex them but you don't have the ice block up. Well, let's play Alex, let's play Mr. Lackey, and let's play the ice block for free. But that's a fancy combo. You don't really want to include it in Freeze Mage, I think. But the effect is really strong. Like once there are more secrets coming up, and I will go to the next card, and the next card actually is a tempo-based secret, then I can see this card being good enough. So let's go to another card, and that is Polymorph Potion. Polymorph Potion is a card, or is a new secret for Mage, and a secret that is more tempo-based. Secret: after your opponent plays a minion, transform it into a 1/1 sheep. I know a card where it is really good against, guys. I would say against Malygos it's quite good, huh? But yeah, jokes aside, getting a Polymorph on a minion, people can of course play a little around this. But it's not that easy to do. So, or not always that easy to do. So, yeah, the potion of Polymorph is, I guess it's one of the better tempo based secrets for Mage. And then I can see the Lackey becoming better if we can include these ones. Still not sure, like, we are not gonna play this Polymorph and the Lackey just for them together. We need more. But it's one of the better Mage secrets. Mage has a lot of secrets that are so overpaid, that are so bad. Ice Block is a good secret. Entity is fine. In some way, Counterspell is fine, but it also gets countered by all the coins and 1 mana spells. So it's one of the better Mage secrets, and maybe the best one together with Entity for Tempo Mage. Okay, and then now the last card that is revealed, and this card is super amazing. Really excited about this one. Inkmaster Solia. I'm really excited about this one. 7 mana, 5/5. No duplicate. If your deck has no duplicates, the next spell you cast this turn costs 0. And again, a card that is not gonna be that good for tempo decks. Of course, you have to play this card into Firelands Portal stuff, but this card can be really good for Reno decks, and especially for Reno Mage. I would say if this card can bring Reno Mage viable. We already have seen more cards that I already said earlier. These might be cards that we can make Reno Mage work. We already have the Kazakas now that you can also play in Mage. This card you can play in Mage. So really, really cool card. But why I like this card so much is because it makes the slower Mage a little bit more viable. This effect is really strong. This card is really good. Really good. Mage also has some really good spells that are more based for the late game. And the biggest problems of Reno decks is they cannot play minions because they have to remove all the time. Well, you can now play your Flame Strike for 0 mana and develop a 5/5. Normally, your problem is not the tempo. So, really good card. If you can play this together with Flame Strike, you always have the fancy combo of Pyroblast. The funny thing is for this card, you also want to play a lot of more spells. More spells are getting viable to play in Reno decks. You don't want to have duplicates, so you're gonna include a lot of spells. Mage has a lot of good spells, and even sometimes with a Frostbolt it can already be good. So really cool card, especially looking in this card together with Flame Strike, Firelands Portal, maybe Polymorph, Fireball. These cards are all fine, especially the removal cards, but really good card. And I think Reno Mage will be a deck that we're gonna see around. I'm not sure if it will become like tier 1, but it's gonna be an archetype that will be around now, hopefully in Constructed. So quite excited about that. This was the review for now, guys. Hope you like the review for this week. And see you at the next one, guys. Let me know your thoughts also.